Rose here today for Lawnfawn and welcome back to the channel. Today I have a window card to share with you all. I'm going to be using the Superstar stamp set and I'm going to be using the sentiments and the little mouse and the telescope as well as a few stars out of the set as well. I'm going to be using the Puffy Star Stackables dies to create the little star window opening into the middle of the card. And I'm also going to use the Grassy Hillside borders dies for some of the grassy elements at the bottom of the panel as well. For some additional images, I wanted to bring in a few more stamp sets, but these are completely optional and you can probably use any stamp set that you would like, but these are just the ones that I chose to use. I'm going to use Dandy Day for one of the little mice. I'm going to use the Swan stamp set for the little moon that comes in the set and also the heart. I just really liked the style of these two images. I'm also then going to use the Butterfly Kisses stamp set, which is a staple. I really like the clouds in this set. And then I'm going to use Open Me for this little sign because I love to mount my sentiments on there. And for cardstocks, because I thought this would be a little bit easier to use, I'm going to use Dolphin for the card base, number 2 pencil for the star. I'm also going to use Cilantro for the grass and Blue Jay for the night sky panel as well. So once I've gone ahead and chosen all of my supplies that I'm going to use, I'm going to go ahead and create the card base and all of the die cut elements on that first, just to get that all out of the way and ready to go. So I decided to cut down a piece of dolphin cardstock to 4 inches wide by 11 inches tall, and I scored that at 5.5. That's my preferred card base size to make. It's a little bit skinnier than a regular A2 size card, but I really like that look. I then have a piece of Blue Jay cardstock here, and so I want a little strip on the left hand side where I'm going to basically incorporate my scene. So I just cut that down to 2 inches wide and I'm going to adhere that onto the left hand side. But before I go ahead and do that, I need to do some die cutting first. I just went ahead and also cut down this Cilantro cardstock to 2 inches wide, and I'm going to cut little Grassy Hillside borders at the bottom. So now that all of my cardstock is cut to size, I'm going to go ahead and do some die cutting. So I have the number 2 pencil cardstock here. I just really love this shade of yellow. And I'm going to use the Puffy Star Stackables dies and use one of the larger sizes of stars to cut from this yellow cardstock as well as from the card base. So I'm going to do the card base first because it's a little bit easier this way. I just went ahead and lined up over the card base where I wanted the window to be cut. I just taped that down with some washi tape and I'm going to run this through my die cutting machine. So when you run this through your die cutting machine, you don't want the star to cut through the top of the card base. So you're just going to line up the plate just over where you want the area to cut. So I went ahead and ran that through my die cutting machine, and now I'm just going to cut along the fold of the card base to deattach that star. And you can see there it creates this fun little window in the top right hand corner. Now that I've gone ahead and done that, I can use the blue piece to line up over the top of that die cut star and wedge that little star into where it's already cut so I can line it up and get the perfect cut. And I'm going to adhere that down onto the blue piece and run that through my die cutting machine once again. Once that's all run through, it's time to cut out the little yellow piece as well. So I'm using that positive grey star that was left over and I'm just lining that up on the edge of this yellow cardstock. I'm then taking the same sized star die, lining it up over the top, adhering it down, and I'm going to run that through a die cutting machine as well. And this just ensures that you're going to get the perfect size cut. Now that all of my elements are coming together, the very last piece to go ahead and cut is just the green piece from the Grassy Hillside borders. So I just used a couple of different designs and cut at the bottom of that green cardstock and laid it at the bottom of the blue panel. I'm not going to adhere anything down yet, so I just set that off to the side, and now it's time to Copic Coloring my images. So the best thing about this card is it requires pretty minimal colours for Copic Coloring. A lot of the same colours can be used. So for the telescope, I'm using some cool grey markers. I'm using C9, C7, C5 and C3 for the darker areas, and then I'm using C3, C1, C0 and C00 for the lighter areas. For the little mice, I decided to colour those in grey, so I'm using W3, W1, W0 and W00 for those, trying to keep them as really light as possible. And one of the things I really like to do when I'm using a lot of grey on a card is to use lots of different shades of grey. So I use some cool greys for the telescope because that would technically be made out of like a metal, and I find cool greys perfect for that. I used warm greys for the mice because I feel like they're better for critters. And then because I needed to incorporate one last grey for the sign and the speech bubbles, I decided to bring in some neutral greys, so N2 and N0. And this just makes sure that they don't all look the same, and I just really like the way that looks. So then I went ahead and used some yellows for the stars and the moon. I just used Y18, Y15, Y13 and Y11. This was super duper simple, and you could definitely get away with just using like 2 or 3 colours since they are such small areas, but I just kept out the 4 because I wanted to make sure that I used all 4 for the moon. And then for the browns, I'm colouring in the wood stick of the sign. And then I decided to go over one of the mice just because I didn't want them all grey and I wanted to bring in a little bit more brown to the card. So I'm using E47, E44, E42 and E41 for that. Then I'm moving on to some light pink areas. So I'm colouring in the heart and also the insides of all of the mouse's ears. I also did do their cheeks just with the 2 lightest colours as well. So I used R22, R21, R20 and R000. And then for the final colouring element, I'm just colouring in a little bit of blue on the clouds. So I used B000, B000 and 0 to blend that all out. Now that all of the Copic colouring is done, I just went ahead and cut out all of my images, and now it's time to add a little bit of depth and dimension onto these die cut pieces. So when I use plain coloured cardstock, I generally like to use some sort of distress ink over the top of them, or any sort of ink, just to add a little bit more dimension to them, just because the critters themselves have so much dimension with all of the shading that I want the like plain cardstock pieces to do the same thing. So for the cilantro green pieces, I just pulled in a little bit of mowed lawn and added that to the top of the pieces just very lightly. For the number 2 pencil star, I brought in fossilized amber to add a little bit of depth onto the top and the left side of the star as well. I also used some black soot for the blue panel, and that finished up all of the ink blending for those areas. Next, because I had that little flappy piece on the card base of my card, I decided to add some acetate in here to keep it a little bit more together. So I used some lawnfawn acetate, just cut a little square and added a ton of adhesive onto the inside of the card. I then went ahead and laid that acetate over the top to sandwich in. And then I took another piece of dolphin cardstock, cut it to the exact same size, and cut out the star in the exact same area, just using that positive piece that I used before. And I'm just going to adhere that onto the inside of the card just to make sure that you can't see the messy acetate. I then went ahead off camera and adhered the yellow star on the inside and the blue panel on the front. And then I'm going to go ahead and arrange my scene. So I'm using a couple of little mice at the bottom with the telescope and the sign. And then I added the clouds in the sky with the moon and one of the little mice dangling there as well. And then I just scattered a few of the other little stars and constellation pieces around as well. Once I was pretty happy with the placement, I just went ahead and added a ton of foam tape onto the backs of the images and also used the glue tube adhesive as well, just to adhere a few little stars around as well. And for the sentiment, I stamped the "You Are a Superstar" sentiment into that little post there, that signpost, and I just used some black ink for the "You Are" and star, and yellow for the super word as well. I then just finished off the card by adding the rest of the little stars and constellations onto the inside using the same glue tube adhesive, and I just made sure to position them so you could see them from the outside of the card as well. Once I had finished adhering those, that pretty much finished up the card for today. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed. I really love this little window design. I think it's super cute and works really well for this style of card. All of the supplies that I used will be listed down below and linked over the blog, and I will catch you all next time. Thanks so much for stopping by today.